can understand, which makes it all the more puzzling how Dark Souls was able to appeal to such a wide audience, because you can't go through the game and not be constantly asking questions. The plot is minimalistic, and it's up to the player to come to their own conclusions. You fill in the blanks, and there's a fuck ton of blanks to fill in. You see this Sea of Thieves? That's how you create your own fun. Now, there's always the possibility that by making your story vague and confusing, it ends up making no sense and being vague and confusing. But then there's the other side where you have a unclear story, but the experience is so enchanting it makes you want to know more. Would you like to know more? And that's what Dark Souls accomplishes, so it doesn't fall into the plain old just bad storytelling category. But let's pull back this layer of dragon scales and actually look at what Dark Souls offers within its narrative. Let's take a look at the depth within the onion. I think anytime there's a series of books, movies, TV shows, video games, or whatever, and there's enough interest in the lore and background of that series to fuel 1.2 million subscribers into a YouTube channel, I think it's safe to say people are interested. The amount of fan theories and lore explanation videos on this series should tell you all you need to know about how involved gamers are with the story. An interesting tidbit I read was the idea that the item descriptions in-game are actually the player character's thoughts. Probably not true, but some items become much more interesting when you look at things that way. And that's the great thing about interpretive stories, the way you look at it. Dark Souls is fucking deep. You don't need me to tell you that. And there's plenty of reasons why. So many that I don't have time to explain them all. Well, for one, ambient music is basically non-existent. There's a total of 4 areas in the entire game, excluding boss battles, where music plays. Firelink Shrine, Daughters of Chaos Bonfire, Guinevere's hot and steamy bedroom, and Ash Lake. If you played through Dark Souls, then you know each one of these areas are vitally important, and the music creates a unique tone and feeling for each one. Sadness and sorrow, hope and faith, magnificence and awe, warm and welcoming. This lack of music creates a feeling of isolation for the majority of the experience, and this means there's nothing to distract you from the world you're in. The only things that follow you through Lordran are the sound of your footsteps and clanking armor, and it makes those moments when you hear music much more powerful as a result. The combat is deep too, and we'll talk about that a bit later. But what I find to be the single greatest thing about Dark Souls is how everything is connected. Not just in map layout, but in items, bosses, enemies, NPCs, they all connect together to form a greater whole. Take the classic gameplay element of dying and respawning. In pretty much every other video game except Bioshock, once again, the concept of respawning has little to no explanation at all, because it's just a video game. But in Dark Souls, death and respawns aren't just gameplay mechanics, they're part of the story. You are an undead, branded with the dark sign, which means you cannot truly die.
How do you kill that which has no life?
But each death brings you closer to hollowing, a concept we'll explore later on. So you're linked to the fire, you are linked to the flame, and as long as there are bonfires, you will keep coming back. It's not often you see a game that has justification for its gameplay mechanics written into its lore. Let me ask you, have you ever thought about what Estus actually is and why it heals you? Most people probably saw it as any other item that restores health, because it's just a video game. Hearts, potions, medkits, food, magical green herbs that definitely isn't weed, a harmonious melody. Games never explain why you get healed from this shit, because it really doesn't matter. But in Dark Souls, it does. Estus is bottled fire, people. That's why it refills at the bonfire. You capture the flame in your flask. Dark Souls is about disparity between life and death, fire and darkness, and the bonfires are beacons of life. Miracles come from Gwyn and his faithful knights. Pyromancy comes from the Witch of Izalith and her Daughters of Chaos. And sorcery comes from Seath the Dankless These gameplay tools have reason to be in the game beyond their immediate use. You could run through the list of items, mechanics, tools, and weapons and connect each one of them as pieces to form the greater whole of Dark Souls' universe, story, and lore. And that's the beauty of this game. That's where the depth comes from. Now, the story, meaning, and purpose behind Dark Souls is riddled with obscurity and has plenty of room for different interpretations. And while I could turn this video into something that discusses nothing but the lore for 40 plus minutes, I'm more or less going to highlight what I think are the most important themes or messages that Dark Souls tries to hammer home. The things I learned. I encourage you to share your own thoughts as well. So we have the basic premise of the player being an undead in an asylum, where they're all corralled to await the end of the world.
This is your fate.
Well, that's a pretty shitty fate right there. But homeboy Oscar breaks you out because there's a prophecy. The chosen undead, who's supposed to travel to Lordran and ring the bells of awakening. And when you do that, the fate of the undead comes shining. So right off the bat, we want to know what's going to happen to the undead. What's going to happen to us? All these NPCs, all these roaming hollows. That question is put into your mind from the very beginning. Cutscenes are rare, and none are more jam-packed with information than the opening. What this scene showcases is how man came to be, how they became gods, how they took the world by storm and destroyed the previous regime to create their own. When fire was created, we learned of our existence. We strove to discover, explore, and build, and we found soul within the flame, metaphorically and physically. Incidentally, you could look at the real-world discovery of fire by primitive man as arguably the most revolutionary thing to happen in the history of human beings. Once we found fire, the world was forever changed around us.
But remember one thing. Always fear the flame, lest you be devoured by it and lose yourself. I would hate to see that happen again.
So much of what Dark Souls presents is relatable to the real world. You can interpret the idea of prolonging the Age of Fire or ushering in the Age of Dark as a message on the rise and fall of civilizations. For example, the Roman Empire thrived for centuries, but eventually its flames faded, and despite their best efforts to keep the Age of Romans alive, nothing could stop the coming dark. How long will our age last? The old Roman deities were cast aside, replaced with a new god and his son. Just as you can become the harbinger of a new age in Dark Souls, the Age of Dark. The typical Lord of Darkness trope in fantasy stories works better in the world of Lordran than most other stories. I really enjoyed the ambiguity of the endings because it's great for speculation. And what I saw in these endings is that they are rooted in polar opposite ideas, that of self-sacrifice and self-preservation, martyrdom or apathy. But as we all know, maybe Dark Souls is meant to portray the calamity and hopelessness of knowing the empire, the civilization you serve, the place you call home is coming to an end. How do you deal with the coming dread? In this sense, the undead and the dark could be seen as the always present threat of a tide of people who are bound to one day replace your way of life with their own.
Oh, heretic, swing from God, and eternal curse upon you.
This theme of different ages collapsing and rising is present in both sequels, which means it's definitely something the designers wanted you to think about. One theme that sticks out very well in the Dark Souls experience is perseverance. Individually, the undead, or humans, are weak, fragile creatures. The enemies that don't outmatch you in size will simply outnumber you. Throughout the game, you encounter several bodies with helpful items, and while most of them could be looked at as simply items left by the developers for the player, I see a deeper meaning. Because why is it that most every item you find is tied to a corpse? Isn't that strange? Because every one of those things was left behind by the person who died there. Individually, you suck. But as more and more undead travel to fulfill the prophecy, as undead are caught in the crossfire of all these colliding forces, at some point or another they finally succumb. So as you journey through Lordran, you encounter greater souls, better items, stronger weapons, all from others who made it farther than the last. Even in death, the undead that came before you are helping you by leaving something useful behind. You essentially get the accrued knowledge, weapons, skills, equipment, and items of every single traveler or unfortunate soul in Lordran, because you are destined to succeed where others have failed. You're the main character, after all.
As I explained earlier, I'm the main character.
The chosen undead. But this also ties in with the game's difficulty. As an undead, finding purpose and striving towards a goal is what keeps you from hollowing. A slow process where a person loses their mind and sanity. Every gamer's goal when playing Dark Souls is to beat it. But what of those who never did? What of those who ran up against a wall they couldn't climb, a tower they couldn't scale? They became the hollows of Lordran. You see, you only become hollow when you quit. So by persevering through failure, you, the chosen undead, will feel great satisfaction when you overcome those challenges that give you so much trouble. You will run up against an enemy that seems unbeatable. You will die. You will fail. But it doesn't matter how many times you are slain, how massive and impossible the road ahead might seem. Because so long as you push against the inevitable and learn from failure, you will survive in Lordran and you will survive the real world. And you'll come out stronger than before, ready to take on the next challenge.
Oh, fuck.
Following in the Dark Souls universe is one of the coolest concepts I've ever seen a game present. It's a microcosm of losing your purpose in the real world. It can also be seen as a metaphor for depression. Those that go hollow submit to their darkest feelings, their sadness, dread. They give up and lose themselves. Life is about overcoming challenges, solving problems, and carving some meaning out of your existence. What value does a person's life have if they don't strive to accomplish something? What satisfaction do you get from life when there are no problems to solve? Just as characters go hollow in Dark Souls, you too would go hollow in the real world if you did nothing with your life. There's far more to this game than meets the eye, and it's because of its open-ended method of storytelling that your interpretations might be different. They might be completely different. But no matter who you are or what you might think, just stay safe, friend, and don't you dare go hollow. Now, when it comes to gameplay, the combat in Dark Souls has a lot of depth, too. There's so many cool weapons and badass armor. In this game, you can look like an onion. For Christ's sake, that's the armor Shrek would wear. Certain styles of weapons have different move sets, and everything has its advantages, disadvantages, and requirements. Except the Ring of Favor and Protection. That's the best thing in the world. And you'll need to be smart about what you invest in. Pro tip, resistance is the best stat to level. I max it first. But this is where the currency, souls, what else did you think it would be, comes into effect. Souls are the lifeblood of your journey. If you die 2 times in a row without returning to the spot you first perished, you'll lose all the souls you have. You want to avoid this at all costs. But you also need to carry enough souls to be able to actually buy things, and I love this risk-reward playstyle that Dark Souls offers, because the two-death system means that you didn't learn from your first mistake and you made it again. If you can't get back to the spot that you first died, there's plenty of builds to experiment with, and that's where the fun begins, because you can't realistically cover everything in one playthrough. You have to make decisions about what playstyle you like best, so you can optimize in it or try to find a general balance in between. Some weapons hit hard, but they weigh you down and are easy to dodge. Others can inflict status effects, and all the sets of armor offer different levels of protection. Dark Souls has an amazing and rewarding progression system, and on the opposite side, it can be brutally punishing too. Losing your souls and humanity too many times can set you back, and in my case, I felt I had to restart the game. But the knowledge I got from that initial playthrough stuck with me. It feels great to finally be able to use that sorcery spell you've had forever, or that giant great axe that looks badass, or to be able to not bat roll while wearing full havels. These accomplishments give power, satisfaction, and pride to the player because they happen both in the long term and the short term. Because if you're like me, then you're creating and improving your build throughout the entire game. Best part of it is, damn near everything is viable in PvE, especially dexterity, am I right, son bros? But the mechanics, the flow of combat is where the game truly shines, because it doesn't matter how upgraded your equipment is, how good your weapons are, if you can't manage this little green bar right here, if you can't dodge, duck, dip, dive, and block, you ain't gonna get through shit. This green bar right here, This is your stamina, your soul, your life. Every action you take besides walking requires stamina, and it's the game's way of limiting what you're capable of. The entire game must be played around it, unless you play a cheesy glass cannon sorcery build, like a Queerbow. Keeping with the tradition of ambiguity, the only means of directly communicating with other players in front of you is through emotes that aren't sold in loot boxes for once. Holy shit! It adds a bit of comedy to the game, and it's the limitations of how you can communicate that makes it so fun. Against the AI, you have to anticipate the movements of your enemies. Charging in recklessly without a plan is bound to get you killed. Yeah, you might be able to set that first-person shooter to easy and take out everything without sweating, but Dark Souls doesn't have a difficulty setting, okay, bitch? You gotta be a man or a woman. Every enemy is different, and most likely, you're going to die to each one of them at least once. However, this is where Dark Souls offers a level of mastery for the players to achieve. By learning the patterns and moves of your foes so well, you can fight them without even taking a hit. With enough time, practice, and patience, you can essentially trivialize the game across multiple playthroughs. Sometimes I get cocky because I've beaten all the Souls games multiple times, and when I start to play carelessly is when I get reminded that I can't fuck around because I'll get punished. But whether you've got a bow, magic, miracles, or a crap ton of upgraded armor pieces, you use the tools you have to your advantage, and don't be afraid to use them. Dark Souls is difficult, you've heard that a million times, but why the challenge is so renowned is because it's not bullshit difficulty. For the most part. Yes, there is trial and error, but again, that connects with the themes, with the gameplay. You learn through failure. In fact, that's like the only way to learn. Pain is an excellent teacher. If I had to highlight some negative aspects of the game, Capra Demon fight is just so fucking stupid. There's no way going through that door for the first time that you're gonna come out on top. It's just not gonna happen. You have almost no time to take in your surroundings before you get ass blasted. Ceaseless Discharge has some pretty questionable hitboxes, and the Bed of Chaos is, well, the Bed of Chaos. But aside from some of that cheap bullshit, there's a saying my martial arts master told me. Luck favors the prepared man. So if you hear about this place that's called Black Town, you might consider finding or buying gear and items that can counteract some of the shit you'd expect to see in a place called Black Town. Of course, there ain't no gear that can counteract that frame rate. By preparing yourself with upgraded weapons, leveling up, and a utility bag full of tricks, is how you can conquer the game. And that's something I really love. The preparation you make before the next challenge, before the next excursion. Combat is fluid and heavily favors one-on-one encounters. It's slow and methodical. Attacks have long wind-up times, but to counteract this, they have brutally punishing damage. A lot of games might have the illusion of multiple enemies attacking you, but oftentimes they only attack one at a time and act like mindless goons in the background. This is not the case with Dark Souls. Getting surrounded is a surefire way of getting your ass handed to you and sent back to the bonfire. So playing smart, observing your surroundings, and trying to go for one-on-one fights is essential to success. Let's talk about PvP. In the early days, it took players a while to figure out what weapons and builds were most effective against other players. It sucks to say, but there's a lot of mechanics that can be abused in Dark Souls PvP. I've run up against so many just cheesy one-shot glass cannon sorcery builds in this game. It's that's no fun. There's no fun going up against that every single invasion. And for one, if you stock up on humanity, you can exploit that to pretty much heal indefinitely. There's a lot of cheese tactics too, and I've been the victim of some very questionable backstabs and hitboxes. Like, how the fuck did this arrow hit me? You serious? This was mostly forgivable in the original Dark Souls, but in the remastered version, so many of these exploits weren't fixed. See this video by Inferno Plus for a full breakdown on these bugs, because it highlights the problems with the PvP perfectly. But those moments when you get into a long-winded battle and both have drained your Estus and dueled to the death, those are magical moments. One of the greatest things about this system are the benevolent invaders. People who invade you with the apparent intention to kill you and pilfer your humanity, but turn out to give you nice items and leave. I once had a guy invade me in Blighttown while I was dying by those toxic bastards. I had barely enough HP to survive it with no Estus left. When the invader approached me, I showed him I was out of Estus, and when I was going through the menus to drop a humanity for him so he wouldn't have to kill me, he dropped 2 for me and then black crystalled out. That type of kindness in such a cruel, harsh world can really bring warmth to your heart and pick you up when you're down. There's a lot of nuances to the PvP system, too many to go into, but being able to help or hinder the progress of others is an awesome idea. Just as your Estus Flask has a lore-related reason for being in the game, so too does the multiplayer.
We are amidst strange beings in a strange land. The flow of time itself is convoluted, with heroes centuries old fading in and out. The very fabric woven and relations shift and obscure. There's no telling how much longer your world and mine will remain in conflict.
This statement by Solaire is a perfectly vague explanation. Do the summon signs and invasions send you back or forward in time? Do they send you to an identical world with a different chosen undead? There's no concrete reason behind it, but it's safe to say without the multiplayer component and this description from Solaire, Dark Souls would lose a lot of its magic. This is a journey where you don't have to go it alone. You can share it with others, both good people and evil. Other players can leave their summon signs or messages, and depending on the player, they may be trying to help, hinder your progress, or send you off a cliff. The gameplay overall is fantastic and unique, offering limitless possibilities for experimentation and builds, and the PvP is there to not only enhance the experience but to build up the world of Lordran and offer great gameplay opportunities if you ever get bored of fighting the AI. But what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Dark Souls? That's right, it's the motherfucking bosses. A classic staple of video games and the big highlights of Dark Souls. I'd go so far as to say that this game revolutionized difficulty in the mainstream's view, because most of the bosses are so perfectly designed. They're all huge and epic, they intimidate and make us feel tiny. And even ones like Pinwheel that are super easy or the Bed of Chaos that are cheap as hell. All these bosses offer value in either gameplay, challenge, lore, atmosphere, or all of the above. The first time going up against each one of these bad boys, I can safely say I died against all but Gwendolyn, Pinwheel, and the Demon Fire Sage. The bosses evolve as you progress, and this is demonstrated in 3 fights in particular. Stage 1 is the Asylum Demon, your introduction to bosses. This baddie is here to teach you the mechanics of these fights, and use your surroundings to your advantage. Stage 2, the Bell Gargoyles, show the player that not every fight will be straightforward, and it gives you a taste of a boss with more than one enemy. Finally, the famous Ornstein and Smoke battle is Stage 3. These guys' attacks complement each other perfectly, and they attack in unison. They are what separates the wheat from the chaff. This is the point that you get the Lord Vessel in the story, to discover your destiny. And if you can beat these 2 bad boys, you have what it takes to beat the game. Everything you experience through these 3 key bosses are the lessons you need to know to complete Dark Souls. Probably my favorite boss fight in the entire Souls series is the Four Kings, because as far as I can remember, it's the only arena that can kill you instantly, and it is scary as fuck. This is the most stressful fight in the game because the kings are not only challenging, have high HP, deadly ranged and close-up attacks, but there's more than one of them. Their swords are so big they swing around behind them. I mean, the pressure to take out one king before the next one shows up as fast as possible is unlike any other pressure or stress I've felt in a video game. The utter blackness makes it hard to gauge how far away the kings are. You have absolutely no cover to hide behind, and those homing bullets track you for like 15 seconds. It's so exhilarating. The Four Kings perfectly illustrate a well-designed boss fight in every way. Now, because gamers will play through using different builds, the difficulty of bosses can vary. For instance, in my first playthrough, I beat ONS on my second try. No lie. You know how I'm not lying? Because I died to both of these Hydras at least 15 times. I just could not get the fight down for the life of me. I'd either get shot by these spitballs or fall to my death. Going through it now, they're a piece of cake, but my first time? Good lord. Every single boss in the game brings something new and different to the table. Yeah, there's a couple stinkers like the Demon Fire Sage, but overall, they bring a whole new level of terror and fear to an already hostile world. In my opinion, there are some games that should be played a certain way to get the most out of them. To tie into my earlier point about how Dark Souls makes you curious, the best playthrough is your first one, because you have no idea what's around the corner, what to expect. This is why I think watching guides or gameplay before you play the game yourself is a cardinal sin. You shouldn't do that, because half the fun is discovering things on your own and getting your ass whooped. Not many games give players such an extraordinary urge to explore and make it so dangerous at the same time. It's not even just the enemies you have to look out for. Gravity has killed me more times than any single boss. And if you head into the wrong direction early on, you'll likely get fucked by skeletons or ghosts. But if you knew where to go beforehand because you looked it up, you're forfeiting part of the experience for convenience. And here's another thing. Finding out which areas fuck you up and which ones don't makes you want to get stronger so you can go back to those areas. The temptation of new weapons, souls, plunder, and pillage is much too hard for adventurous gamers like us to refuse. That's what entices me about Dark Souls. Combined with the healing system, there's a rich reward scenario. I mean, perhaps you're down to 2 chugs of that sweet sweaty tea, but you feel close to a bonfire or special treasure. Do you risk death, your souls, and humanity to press on? Or do you turn back, play it safe, and try again? These decisions you make throughout the game are crucial. Which bonfires you kindle, if you've got humanity to spare, you've got to scrounge and collect everything you possibly can to be prepared. Thank God there's no limitations on your inventory. Every choice made by the player can have its rewards and consequences. What separates Dark Souls from many other games is nobody is essential. The game doesn't have any arbitrary barriers on who you can and can't kill. Some NPCs will encourage you to help them, while others will try to send you on the path of bloodshed.
Most fools have more humanity than they know what to do with. Now, who do you imagine will make the best use of it?
You could say there's even a morality system built into the game, but it's not measured with some arbitrary number. It's your own moral compass. When it comes to level design, art style, and feeling of the different areas, Dark Souls is perfection, if not the closest thing to it. Firelink Shrine is a great hub area that leads you to the following locations: Undead Parish, Undead Burg, Catacomb, New Londo Ruins, Valley of the Drakes, Blighttown, and the Undead Asylum. That's 7 freaking locations accessible after the tutorial if you pick the Master Key. Remember how I talked about connection? The same thing applies here. That's freedom, that's choice. And yeah, many of those areas are tough early on, but there's nothing stopping you from going there anyways. One fan favorite technique is to go through the catacombs and kill Pinwheel early on so you can get the rite of kindling. Having a series of complicated paths, shortcuts, secret areas, and hidden bonfires like this can make it difficult to remember where you are and where you need to go. But it's like knowing the area around your house, and once you know, you never forget. You realize this type of connected level design is very beneficial to the game's experience. The designers want you to understand which paths lead where, and memorizing them will make your life easier. I want to emphasize that Dark Souls, in every aspect of its design, rewards the intelligent player, the attentive player. And because the world of Dark Souls can immerse so well with its scenery, the gameplay can immerse you on the same level. This might be somewhat controversial, but having the ability to warp between bonfires was something I thought you had to earn. Giving that tool to the player right after the first boss might be convenient, but doing that risks losing one of the greatest parts of this game, a connected world that feels real. Each area offers new obstacles for the player to overcome, but every one of them shares a similarity. Gravity is a fucking bitch. Crystal Caves forces you to be attentive, or guess what happens. Luckily, and you'll find this good game design in every corner of Dark Souls, the player can grab these prism stones on the way there, and use them to get through. Tomb of the Giants puts you in utter darkness, forcing you to sacrifice your shield for a light source, or your helmet. Lost Izalith and Demon Ruins have large patches of lava. New Londo Ruins throws a bunch of ghosts at you that appear from above, below, and can move through walls. The enemies you face aren't the only things hostile to the player. The environment is too. Good old Sen's Fortress, and of course, the Abyss. From Software got very creative with all the different ways they could kill you in this game, and that's something I appreciate. And as I keep reiterating, Dark Souls is very unorthodox in almost every conceivable way. And with the use of mods and thanks to Shazez, sorry if I said your name wrong, you can actually see how detailed the world is beyond the normal boundaries.
Out of all the episodes that I've done of Boundary Break, I've never seen so much detail to a set of buildings from a distance.
Most games will have very low quality rendering on the stuff that's in the background, places you can't even access. That's to save on memory. But Miyazaki doesn't give a fuck. He wants immersion, damn it, and he got it. Dark Souls puts so much effort into the backgrounds just to make you feel immersed. And another thing that kind of blows my mind is Dark Souls doesn't stop the gameplay to load in a new area. It does it seamlessly for the most part. That's an extremely underrated achievement because the necessity for a video game to load something doesn't disrupt the experience like you would expect it to. What Dark Souls also offers is a sense of scale, subtle grandiosity. That's a good word to know. For example, when you arrive at Firelink Shrine, you can see 3 more areas that are inaccessible. So add that to the 7 other areas I mentioned. You can see Anor Londo way the fuck up there, and what I think is the Grand Archives. And you can also see the Great Hollow. Being able to look at something way the fuck off in the distance, get there, and look back at where you were is absolutely amazing. This is what makes Dark Souls feel epic. It feels like a real world that you don't have to watch a movie or a TV show or read a book to experience. You get to run around on your own. You have control. Getting an idea of how large these vast kingdoms are and how small of a speck the chosen undead is in all of it. Even when you're down in 15 FPS town, these huge arches exist. You can see the swampy ground below. If you think about it, Blighttown is just a massive fucking sewer. Can we just take a moment to appreciate the coolest area in all of video games? Ash Lake. The first time I discovered this area after braving through the curses in the Great Hollow, I was blown away. Staring at the endless sea, the massive trees around you, and thinking, maybe each one of those trees connects to a world just as massive as Lordran. You might also think there's a lot of unnecessary climbing and running in Dark Souls, but no, you're wrong. Taking that long-ass stroll to the last surviving ancient dragon is just epic. When you run down that path, you've got 2 whole minutes to think about what lies beyond. The interconnectivity of all the levels in Dark Souls is something From Software has tried to replicate for years. The first time going through Lordran, one of the most beautiful things about it was imagining what this place was like in its prime, before it was devastated. But now every Souls game after this has done the same thing, thrust the player into a land that's gone to shit, and it's just not as fascinating the 4th time around. I think Dark Souls 1 really was lightning caught in a bottle. The atmosphere, look and feel of these places, it's iconic, beautiful, serene, and will be remembered above the rest when all else has turned to dark.
I just can't get myself
So let's
shooting.
switch gears here. Characters in Dark Souls are very important because they're the main road through which the game delivers its narrative, primarily with NPC dialogue, which is optional, item descriptions, which are also optional, and the environments, which are optional to pay attention to. The best choice that Dark Souls gives the player is whether or not you give a shit. Most games will force cutscenes upon you, and that's all well and good, but sometimes you just don't want to be forced to give a shit. There's no dialogue-heavy scenes, and most of the characters you hear about throughout the game don't even speak to you.
Be done with you. Just fall on focus.
Artorias and Sif are the 2 prime examples of how powerful the storytelling is. I've hardly ever seen such a strong emotional connection between fans and characters who never actually say a word for themselves. It goes to show that sometimes the best stories are told with fewer words. The world of Lordran carries a very dreary, depressing atmosphere most of the time. Part of that is the feeling of hopelessness just from the insurmountable challenge you're posed with. And the other part is how every NPC represents something about this universe. A land far off, an infested town below, a jolly realm of knights. All of them have survived this long in a world plunged into chaos, and they've all been negatively affected by it. Each one of them tries to carve out meaning, life, and sanity for themselves, and you witness that. Just like the story, many of the characters and their quest lines are far out of sight from the normal player. The world lives on around Firelink Shrine as you progress through the game. Characters move to and fro, some never return, others can be found amidst a grim fate. They all have their own agendas. Some try to gather souls through selling merchandise. Others are content to wait it out. Characters have relationships with the other inhabitants of Lordred. They might hate, love, or serve one another.
Have you heard of the High Elves' trusty matches? If ever a man has rubbed me up the wrong way. Here, have you met that backwoods sheeper? Believe me on this one, my love. The man is trouble. I can see it in his eyes. I just can. No doubt about it. Watch it.
Doesn't this all make for a much more interesting world than a stagnant hub area disconnected from the rest of the game, where people show up, rarely leave, and nothing really changes? Yeah, I thought so. The beauty of Dark Souls is everyone in this world is at risk of going hollow. Everyone knows about this, and it is something to be feared. When talking to most NPCs, they'll encourage you to press on and to avoid becoming hollow.
Don't get yourself killed. Neither of us want to see you go hollow. It's safe. Not bad I thought of going hollow.
Goodbye. Be safe. Don't you dare go hollow. Oh, hello. Terrific to see us both in one piece. And pray that you never go hollow.
Voice acting in this game is phenomenal. I think we all remember the gung-ho voice of Siegmeyer of Katarina, or the luminous and friendly words of Solaire.
You really are fond of chatting with me, aren't you? If I didn't know better, I'd think you had feelings for me. Nothing else, really. Pretend you didn't hear that.
Or the deep, imposing yet compassionate conversations we had with Goth.
Good. What is bravery without a dash of recklessness? I've taken a liking to these.
But to go back to the hopeless and depressing tone of Dark Souls,
Emboldened by the flame of ambition.
brilliant about the game is how the chosen undead could easily be interpreted as the villain in all of this. You kill Quelaag in order to get to the second bell, not knowing her motivations to steal humanity to heal her dying sister. You only realize this after the fact. You help Siegmeyer at him.
Hello, and welcome back to Race Gaming Videos. My name is Hollow, and I have something interesting for you today. Take a look at this. Here we go. And... Alright. What would you call that? Would you call that a one-shot? That's heaven. That's heaven. That's heaven right there. Behind her, press the shoulder and R2. There we go. And then jump R2. Okay. Come on. Just a bit more stamina. Yeah, I mean, that'll do, right? That'll do. Yeah, the last time I showed myself absolutely dominating Margit in this way was with the Hoffrost Stomp and with the Sword of Night and Flame. These two weapons were absolutely broken, and what was happening was the speedrunners using any percent rules or all remembrance rules were either using the Hoffrost Stomp or using the laser, the night aspect of the Sword of Night and Flame, to absolutely dumpster bosses, doing their speed runs to complete the game as fast as possible. To do that, they're obviously going to need these crazy builds. They're super strong. They want to use the absolute peak maximum strength that they can also get their hands on as early as possible, right? So I made a video about that. Like, okay, so they're using this weapon with this Asher War, and they're doing it in this way, and they're getting it to +9 this quickly in these ways, and yeah, it was interesting. Personally, I find it really interesting. I really enjoyed watching it, and I wanted to talk about it. So I did, and I made a video, and they nerfed it the next day. Like, literally the next day it got nerfed, man. So yeah, a bit heartbroken over that, but what can you do? It's understandable. It was using Royal Knight's Resolve to basically buff up your next spell, or Ash of War, for the next 8 seconds, and make it crazy strong. It's not meant to work like that, and I said in that video, I don't know how long this is going to last. Surely they're going to fix this. And they did. The next day, man. Since then, the streamers, the speedrunners, they've been trying to work out, okay, what's the best alternative? What's the best legit option to beat bosses? And they were kind of settling on some interesting options. There was things like Rivers of Blood, there was the Golden Halberd from the Tree Sentinel at the beginning of the game. Really interesting stuff to watch. And then I load up Elijah's stream today, like, oh, I wonder what he's up to, what he's testing today, and he's absolutely dumpstering monsters again. He's using some crazy combination that, yeah, this doesn't look right. What's going on here? Something's not quite right. Now, I don't know if Elijah found this himself or whether he found it from some other source, but this is where I saw it, so I want to acknowledge that. Elijah is not just a great speedrunner and very fun to watch because of that, but he's also a very entertaining streamer, so I really recommend you check him out. But what's happening here? It's a new glitch. It's something that is very much unintended, and you can use it to, again, dumpster bosses in the same way you were dumpstering them with the Sword of Night and Flame. As you can see, I'm holding a katana, an Uchi katana, and I'm holding this other strange weapon, the Bloody Helix. It is a heavy, thrusting sword by its own description. How it all works is it comes from the Ash of War. Warcry gives you a buff, so you'll yell, and you get about a 5% damage buff for something like 8 seconds, kind of like Royal Knight's Resolve, I suppose, in a way. So this is my normal R2 with the katana, right? And when I do the Warcry, I get that damage buff, I'm all lit up, plus some FP, and now my R2 looks like this. A sort of charge where the blade is trailing and doing a slam at the end. Now, this Ash of War, by its own description, is usable on melee armaments, except daggers, thrusting swords, and whips. So as you can see with the Bloody Helix, a heavy thrusting sword, well, that means, hey, I can't use that Ash of War in it, right? And this is what the normal R2 looks like. It's sort of just a channeled up thrust with the hand next to the blade. But what if I swap to the katana and use Warcry? Then I swap to the thrusting sword and R2, and now it's completely different. And it's in fact the katana R2. There's something strange there. Using a different moveset. There's a literal moveset swap. So I am giving this very strong weapon a different moveset that is very powerful, while also benefiting from that roughly 5% attack power increase. This is clearly a glitch and not intended, right? So I cannot imagine this is going to last any longer than Royal Knight's Resolve, but Royal Knight's Resolve bug, well, that lasted about 3 weeks, and it's very relevant and very fun to use and great for speedrunning. Oh, and one thing I really should highlight is you want the main hand weapon, the right hand weapon, to be the one with the warp ride, and your offhand to be the one that's getting benefits of the warp ride, like the Bloody Hellis in this case. If you swap them around and have the Bloody Hellis in your right or main hand, it won't work. So let's try it against Margit. I have my +9 Bloody Hellis once again. I'm currently level 49 because I bypassed this to do all of that. Let's see what happens to him. Last time, the sword of Knight and Blade managed to absolutely dumpster about 80% of his health or something like that. Let's see what we do here. So I'm going to get right up against Margit and just hold R2. I need to be right up against him so all the hits proc. Here we go. And... Alright. What would you call that? Would you call that a one-shot? Alright, we're here to try it against Godric. Let's run down the block. To hand the actual weapon of our choice. Roll the attack. We're going to R2. I think I want to be closer than that. I mean, it's still good damage. You want to kind of press your right side into it so that you get those proc hits, like so. Still, to get him into phase 2 on one single attack, that's not bad. Let's run along the side and finish this poor man off. Oh my god. Alright, this is going to be interesting. This wolf is either going to be a nightmare or heaven. That's heaven. That's heaven. That's heaven right there. So fast I wasn't sure if I would get the R2 up. And now, what about Renala? Okay, let's pop up. Correct weapon. R2. I want to be closer than that. Oh my god, that damage is ridiculous. Full R2. There we go. If I press myself up against...
Hey, what's up guys? I'm going to make this quick. So, I've heard about this recently, how the physics flask could be quite broken. And so I started dueling recently at Meta. And I have not really seen even good players use this yet. I don't even know like if they're really aware of it. But yeah, there is a physics flask that's absolutely broken right now. So, let me just show you what the physics is real quick, and it's the Wing Knight, the Wing Crystal tier, and if you want to have the perfect physics, you have it with the Crimson Bubble tier. So Crimson Bubble tier, everyone is using that. It's basically sort of like second chance in Demon Souls, like when you're near death, it heals you back about halfway health. So it's pretty popular, everyone's using that. I don't really have a problem against this since it makes duels last a bit longer. But the Wing Crystal tier pretty much, it says it reduces your equip load, but I'll show you the extent of how ridiculous that is. So right now, you're seeing my character, I just equipped every heaviest item that I had on me with the heaviest armor, obviously the full armor. And as you're seeing, overload right now. And my stats are, I basically have 25 endurance, but I'm pretty sure you could pull this off at minimum endurance. And so when you drink this physics, both effects last about 3 minutes. And as you're seeing, like with all these items, I'm mid-rolling and with maximum amount of poise. And so you can pretty much play any duel like on that effect and pretty much have the heaviest everything in the game and pretty much overlook endurance completely. Like endurance just became a useless stat for building pretty much. Because, I mean, this physics completely outshines, like, every other effect, really, because it's worth so much. Like, you pretty much be able to put all your endurance points into damage or, you know, whatever you want. You could pretty much rock anything. So, I don't really like this, if I'm being honest. I feel like the more I play this game, the more I'm starting to realize that you have to put some self-limitation on yourself, because there's a lot of very broken things right now. And if you start playing, quote-unquote, the meta, it's going to end up being quite boring, if I'm being completely honest. Like, if you don't start limiting yourself, like, you end up with people just playing Fingerprint Shield, like Bloodhound Step. And, I mean, if you really want to push this further, you can just start region swapping with Helmet, and the game just doesn't work anymore. So yeah, I would strongly suggest putting some self-limitation on yourself if you want to have meta duels like that with this class. It's fine, but I think I'm going to stay away from these things myself because I don't enjoy it, quite frankly. I think I'll just do my own thing. And yeah, that's going to be it. This is the most broken physics in the game, and actually quite disappointed. I don't really like poise either. I think the very high poise here kind of breaks so many things on this game. It makes so many setups useless. So yeah, that's going to be it for today. I want to start dueling like fingerprint shield turtles, and because I mean I'm not going to figure out a way to counter that if there's even a way if I don't fight it. So I want to start fighting with it and against it actually. I upgraded this great shield. I think this great shield actually looks good. But I want to start fighting some of the broken shit. Gotta find a way around it. I mean that's really the only way to go about it. Oh, oh, that's GG. Well, we got one at least. All right, let's try fucking busted this. See how busted that is. You can't Black Crystal me, dude! You can't Black Crystal me! You can't Black Crystal me, bro! Try again. Try next time. Better luck next time, brother. That's actually funny as fuck.
Mighty dragon.
That hit me through my guard, weirdly enough.
Born heir. Lend me thy strength, O kindred. Deliver me unto greater heights. Well.
Man, this is kind of BG, dude. Shields are so fucking powerful here. This guy can barely do anything.
I command thee. I am the Lord of all that is golden.
This is just so fucking powerful. Man, these shields are way, man, shields are so fucking strong. They really have no counterplay, dude. So stupid. And there needs to be more options versus shield. Honestly, like a very simple fix versus shield is just like there's so many different like Ash of War in this game that are supposed to guard break. Like take Sword Dance for instance, right? Give Sword Dance like a one-shot guard break. Give fucking Great Sword the one-shot guard break. Give give a bunch of these. Like give Giant Hunt a one-shot guard break. Just give a bunch of these like a proper guard break. Give the Kick a one-shot guard break. Like once you give options to guard break, like shield are not as much of an issue anymore. Like just that, like it would go like a long way to fixing this. Like if you give various attacks that can guard break, like you can actually have options where the shield can't trade. That's the thing. The shield out trade everything. Like once they can't trade anymore, it's gonna be different. But they need to not be able to trade first. Oh, you have magic, don't you? Man, I have so many fucking things. Your blood, though. Blood is more important. like where? This guy's magic for sure, but our teammate is way slow. Oh man, almost. Man, this guy does not give a fuck. He's actually trying to kill me there. Fuck out of here. He fucking tried to kill me. Fuck it! No! There's no damage! I need to fix that too. Stop it! Oh my god, it does so much! Oh my god, it does so much! That has tracking, but he does no damage. That does so much damage. Holy shit.